All right, everyone, Zoom, we're good? Excellent. All right, Rabbosai, good morning. Let us begin a beautiful, beautiful daf ahead of us today, beginning by thanking our sponsors for the Shara Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Av, Paul and Kathy Pollack, in honor of all of their grandchildren. Baruch Hashem, may they continue to grow and become the best version of themselves. Truly beautiful. Our week of learning sponsors, Bill and Razi Eskin, Lezecha Nishmas, Bill's father Mordechai ben David, Razi's mother Tzivya Bas Moshe Aaron, as well as our week of learning sponsors by the Daf Yomi group in the Schos of complete and enduring refuah shlema for Yehuda ben Michal. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, he together with Kol Cholei Yisrael will have a complete and enduring refuah. All of the neshama shav and aliyah, the families a nechama. And Abba said, with that, let us begin. So, Abba said, today's daf is daf Chaf Vav. We are up to Emirat Hashem daf Chaf Hem Beis. We left off 2 lines from the bottom. So remember again, the Gemara kind of gave us a veiled reference to a story. So the Gemara said that Rebbe and Rabbi Chia, one of them went ahead and elevated a son to the kahuna based on the testimony of his father, and then one of them elevated a brother based on the testimony of his brother. So again, in yesterday's daf, at the end of yesterday's daf, we saw that it was Rebbe who elevated the son on behalf of his father. So the Gemara says, Umid Rebbe ha'ela ben api aviv lekahuna, Rebbe Chia ha'ela ach api aviv lelevia. Sorry, the brother case was to the Levia, to being a Levi. So again, the Gemara just by process of elimination. If Rebbe was the one who elevated the son through the testimony of his father to the kahuna, then it must be that Rebbe Chia was the one who elevated one brother through the testimony of his brother to becoming a Levi. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Chia, Maishna ben Delo. So I will say, the Gemara understands something very interesting. It must be that each did not agree with the halachic premise of the other. So why did Rabbi Chia not believe that it was possible to elevate a son to the kahuna based on the testimony of his father? So the Gemara says, the karafu eitza aviv, very simple, because a son is related to his father, and therefore, again, I will say in general, krovim, relatives, are not believed to give edus, and therefore, again, we can't accept the testimony of a father to go ahead and elevate his son to the kahuna. To which the Gemara says, one second, ach nami karafu eitzel achiv, but one second, at the end of the day, brothers are also related to each other. So if that's the case, if brothers are related to each other, how can you elevate one brother to the Levia, right, based on the testimony of another brother? To which the Gemara says, Chaf Vav Amud Aleph, b'Masiach lefi tumo. Rabbi will say, what was the case? The case was Masiach lefi tumo. Rabbi, we've seen this many times throughout our journeys in Shas. Masiach lefi tumo, Rabbi means like this, that in certain situations, you may have a person who is not believed to give testimony. Let's say a person is unfit, a person, for whatever the reason. There is a concept of Masiach lefi tumo, which is when a person voluntarily provides information, not in the context of testimony, but just again, Masiach lefi tumo means literally he's conversing of his own accord. In other words, just giving us information. That information has a degree of credibility because it is not given as a form of testimony. So what the Gemara is suggesting is like this. When does Rabbi Chia say that Allah Lamaisa, you could believe a brother to elevate his fellow brother to the Levia? That wasn't when one brother was testifying on behalf of the other. That was when one brother was just giving information as a free flow of information, not in the context of testimony. The Gemara gives an example about it. What's an example of Masiach lefi tumo? Listen to this. Ki had Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Like the following case. Ma'aseh ba'adam she'echad shaya Masiach lefi tumo. We'll say there was once a guy, and this guy was just simply providing information. Again, he was not solicited for information. He wasn't asked for information. He was just simply recounting something. What was he recounting? Listen to this. Va'amar zichurani keshani tinok. I remember when I was a kid. Umurkov al ksefo shel abba. I used to ride on my father's shoulder. My father would give me a shoulder ride. V'otziuni mi beis hasefer. My father would take me out of school. Ve'efshituni es kutanti. Ve'et biluni le'echol truma be'erev. And my father would take me out of school. And what would he do? He would take me to the mikvah. He would immerse me in the mikvah. And that evening, we would eat truma together. This was this kid's childhood memory. And I will say, and again, he's just volunteering this information of his own free will. And Rabbi Chia said the story ended like this, that the man ended his testimony, V'chaverai bedilin mimeni. My friends used to go ahead and keep their distance from me. Vayukorin osi Yochanan ochal chalas. And they used to call me Yochanan the challah eater. Yochanan the challah eater. And I will say, this was this kid just recounting a childhood memory. And I will say, from this story, this young man, he was already an adult when he was recounting it, obviously did not consider himself a Kohen. Did not consider himself a Kohen. He's retelling this story as a childhood memory. Ve'elu Rebbe lekahuna alpiv. And Rebbe went ahead and established him as a Kohen based on this testimony. Now I will say, if there's one thing we've seen up until this point, in order to certify kahuna, your own testimony certainly is not enough, at least to establish yichus. So I will say, what do you see from here? The Gemara is just bringing this as an example of masiach lefi tumo. This is just a case of someone who's providing information, again, not in the context of testimony, not in any type of we'll call it testimonial context, just free flow of information. When a person provides information in this way, even though the same person, right, had this same kid come to Beis Din and given testimony like this, would we have believed this testimony? Would we have believed it? No, because you can't give testimony about yourself in most cases. But because it's just a free flow of information, not in the form of testimony, therefore halacha l'maisa, it is believed. It is believed. Okay. So the Gemara just gives us an example. Therefore, both say, just to kind of pull full circle, therefore Rabbi Chia says, in the case where I believed one brother to go ahead and give testimony about the other brother's Levitic status, that was also a case of Masiach lefi tumo. Incredible. So Tanya, Rabbi Shimon Elazar Omer, Kishem shetruma chazaka lekahuna, kach meiser chazaka lekahuna. So both said it's very interesting. So Rabbi Shimon Elazar comes along and says, in the same way that truma consumption is a chazaka for the kahuna. So we'll say, now remember, we are still, what's our primary sugya here? Our primary sugya is to try to figure out what activities themselves solidify a person's kohanic status. That's what we're hyper-focused on right now. So Shimon Elazar says like this, the same way that truma consumption solidifies a person's chazaka for the kahuna, so too the consumption of Meiser Rishon also solidifies a person's kach Meiser Rishon chazaka lekahuna. So too consumption of Meiser Rishon also goes in and solidifies a person's chazaka for the kahuna. V'acholik bebeis din ena chazaka. But I'll look at Rashi for just a moment. V'acholik bebeis din kasaka dait chasha pi beis din akavua be'ir hayuchol kilo truma beisakranas. So I will say what this sounds like is, and if truma disbursement is done through the Beis Din, that does not create chazaka. Okay, so I will say three statements over here. Statement number one, truma consumption establishes chazaka for the kuna. Statement number two, Meiser Rishon consumption establishes chazaka for the kuna. Statement number three, truma disbursement through a Beis Din does not establish chazaka. So it says, let's analyze this. Meiser Rishon de Levihu. They will say, why does Meiser Rishon consumption establish chazaka for a kahuna? For kahuna, I will say, who gets to eat Meiser Rishon? Who is Meiser Rishon? A Levi. So how does Meiser Rishon consumption work for kahuna? To which the Gemara says, Meiser Rishon de Levihu, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar says, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Because what does Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah say? Disanya. Teruma, the Kohen, Meiser Rishon Levi Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says in general, Truma goes to a Kohen, Meiser Rishon goes to a Levi. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer, Meiser Rishon af leKohen. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, Meiser Rishon can even be given to a Kohen. Even be given to a Kohen. To which the Gemara says, that's fine, but Emer dan Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah af leKohen. LeKohen v'lo leLevi mi Amar. Rabbi say, remember again, even Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is saying what? That a Kohen could also eat Meiser Rishon. What isn't Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah saying? He's not saying that only a Kohen eats Meiser Rishon. Rabbi say, when the Brisa says before that halacha l'maisa, Meiser Rishon consumption works to prove Kohanic status, that only works if what? That only a Kohen eats Meiser Rishon. All Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is saying is that what? Even a Kohen can eat Meiser Rishon. In other words, so if you see someone eating Meiser Rishon, there are two possibilities. What are the two possibilities? Either A, what's possibility A? He's a Levi, right? Possibility B is he's also a Kohen, right? Or he may be a Kohen. So what's the right? To which the Gemara says in. Listen to this. We'll say first wide line, Basar de Kansinhu Ezra. So we'll say this is incredible. What are we talking about over here? We're talking about after Ezra penalized the Leviim. We'll say, take a look at Rashi. Last of the white lines in Rashi. Basar de Kansinu Ezra, Leviim, de lo leisvuluhu, kidaminim b'Yevamis, the Parak Yeshu. So we'll say, we're back in our Yevamis days, our good old Yevamis days. So we'll say, what happened in Yevamis? Ezra penalized the Leviim. Why did he penalize the Leviim? Because also remember again, when Ezra comes up, there's only a fraction of the Jewish people that comes up. 42,000 Jews come up with Ezra, a fraction of the population. Which segment was noticeably missing? The Leviim. It's fascinating to see. It sounds like from the Psukim, not one Levi came along with Ezra. So because of that, Ezra penalized the Leviim. He took Meiser Rishon away from them and he gave it to the Kohanim. So therefore, what the Gemara is suggesting is like this. After this edict of Ezra, they will say, if you see someone eating Meiser Rishon, you know with absolute certainty that what are they? They're a Kohen, because Leviim were no longer permitted to go eating Meiser Rishon. So we'll say, it's pretty incredible. So the Gemara says, V'dilma ikru v'yavulei. So we'll say, but here's the issue. The issue over here is, but maybe someone just happened to go ahead and give this guy Meiser Rishon, but lav dafka that he's a Kohen. Rav Chisda, I'm asking, what's the case? Kigon the muchzak lan ba'avua dahai the Kohen who. We'll say, here's the case. This guy in question, we know that his father is a Kohen. V'nofik alei kala de ben grusha ben chalutza. So we'll say, watch this. We have a guy, Aaron. We happen to know that Aaron's father is a Kohen. Rabbi say, say to yourself, if Aaron's father is a Kohen, pretty much doesn't he have it, then he has it in the bag that he's a Kohen, no? No, to which the Gemara says, no. What's the issue? The issue is an issue with his mother. That there was a rumor that his mother was a grusha, his mother was a chalutza, his father illegally married this woman, and therefore we'll say, remember again, if a Kohen marries a grusha, a Kohen marries a chalutza, the child is a halal. So we'll say, so therefore there's always like this cloud of doubt hanging over Aaron. Then what happened? The cholkule lididei maise bebeis hagranas. So we'll say, now what happens? They were giving Aaron Meiser Rishon by the threshing floor. They were dispersing in Meiser Rishon. So let's analyze this. Let's say the Gemara says, Levi, the lav Levihu. So what are the possibilities? Possibility number one is that Aaron's a Levi. We both say, why is it not possible that Aaron's a Levi? Why is that not possible? Because we know his father's a Kohen. Like there are many things you could accomplish in Yiddishkeit. They'll say, but the one thing you can't accomplish is that if your father's a Kohen, there's no way of becoming a Levi. Right? You can become a lot of things, but not a Levi. So we'll say, so therefore again, because we'll say it's fascinating. So it's like a little bit of like detective work over here. So here's what I know. I have a guy, Aaron. Here's what I know about Aaron. His father is a Kohen. What I also know is that there were some rumors swirling about the status of his mother. Some say the mother was a grusha, chalutza, this, that. Okay, we don't know. It's doubt. Now, I see Aaron getting Meiser Rishon. They're giving him at the granary a portion of Meiser Rishon. So let's go through the possibilities. He's not a Levi, the lav Levihu. Right? At the end of the day, he's not a Levi because his father's a Kohen. So Michael and Meimar. So we'll say, so what could be happening over here? Ben grusha or ben chalutzahu, lomi boy. So we'll say, Lo mi bay leman damar ma'aser rishon asel zarim, de lo havu yavile. So we'll say, so let's go through this. So now they're giving him a portion of ma'aser rishon at the granary. So it can't be there. So therefore it can't be that he's a ben grusha ben chalusa, because if he was a ben grusha ben chalusa, then what? De lo havu yavile. Then they would not be giving him ma'aser rishon. Because we'll say, even according to the opinion who says that Ma'aser Rishon can be consumed even by non-Kohanim. We saw this opinion in Yevamos already. According to this opinion who says that Ma'aser Rishon can be consumed by non-Kohanim, Hanimili lemispak lehu. I will say that means that halacha l'maisa, that if a non-Kohen happens, or if Yisrael happens to get his hands on Ma'aser Rishon and he eats it, he could eat it. However, Avabotoras chaluka lo yavile. They both said, but there's one thing we would never do, which is what? We would never give a portion of Ma'aser Rishon to a Yisrael. That we wouldn't do. In other words, they both say, if the Yisrael shows up at the granary to go ahead and get a portion of Ma'aser Rishon, we would not give it to him. So it's actually very interesting. A Yisrael could technically eat Ma'aser Rishon, but we would never give it to him as a disbursement. So Rabbi say, when you put all of this together, interestingly enough, so Rabbi says here. So let's go back. Let's go back for just a moment. The Brisa was talking about how he could solidify Kohanic status of a particular individual. So possibility one was Ma'aser Rishon. I'm sorry, Truma. Okay, that's the easy case. Fine, give him Truma as a Kohen. Possibility number two was he's getting Ma'aser Rishon. So Rabbi said that again. That is a very specific case. What's the specific case? Number one, when is this true? After Ezra penalized the Levium, so therefore the only people really getting Ma'aser Rishon as a disbursement are Kohanim. But what's the particular case in question? The particular case in question was where Allah we have Aaron. Aaron's father is known to be a Kohen. There's some doubt about the identity of his mother, right? But yet we see him getting a disbursement from the granary of Ma'aser Rishon. If you see that happening, that could attest to his Kohanic status. Beautiful. Now the third statement in that brisa was that if someone is getting a chalukah, now we'll say the way we assumed this was that if truma was being distributed by the Beis Din of the town, that does not attest to his Kohanic status. V'acholik bebeis din ain't, so then Gemara quotes it. V'acholik bebeis din ain't a chazaka. So I'll say now the brisa said, if you're getting your disbursement in Beis Din, that is not a chazaka to your Kohanic status, to which the Gemara says, I bebeis din lahavya chazaka, hecha havya chazaka. He'll say, if getting a disbursement in Beis Din doesn't establish a chazaka for your kahuna, then what does establish chazaka? So we'll say, the truth is, the best place to establish chazaka is where? For chazaka for kahuna is where? In Beis Din. We would assume again, I will say, think about it just a moment. Let's say, if you think about the disbursements of Trumas and Maisers, in general, where do they happen? I'm a Yisrael, and I'm just a regular farmer. So what happens? I set aside Truma, I set aside Maiser. Cohen shows up. He says, hi, I'm Aaron Cohen. Now, in general, I will say there's a concept of Kohanim and Leviim not going and actively asking for their portions, right? But again, they show up at the granary. Fine, I give it to them. They will say, do I know that Aaron is a Cohen? Do I know that Moshe is a Levi? I don't know. These guys look like nice guys. They tell me they're Kohanim and Leviim. I give it to them. They will say, B'pashtos, a Beis Din, right? If a Beis Din is going ahead and in charge of dispersing Trumas and Maisros, B'pashtos, they know who they're dispersing it to. But Rav Sheshes HaChagam means to say, Hachol is interesting. Hacholik Truma b'nichse aviv im echav bebeis din eina chazaka. Oh, we'll say, watch this. This is fascinating. Let's say we'll have the following situation. Aaron passes away. Aaron is a father, right? And Aaron has 4 sons, Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, and Itamar. So we'll say, it happens to be that Nadav, they all have the same father, and therefore, both, I remember again, inheritance goes after the father, so they're all going ahead and splitting the same estate. It happens to be Nadav who had a different mother, and I will say when it comes to Nadav's mother, there was some question about was she a grusha, was she a chalutza, what was the nature of the marriage? So I will say now what happens? Nadav shows up to go ahead and split the estate with his brothers. The Rebbe said, now watch this. Included in the estate is what? Truma. Aaron had collected truma before he passed away. He didn't get a chance to consume it. So now there is truma in the estate. They will say all of 4 brothers split the truma equally. Let's assume for a moment no one's a bachar, right? There's an oldest girl. Right? No, none of them are a bachar. So they're going to go ahead and split the entire estate, including the truma, equally. So we'll say, what is the Gemara saying? The fact that Nadav gets a portion of truma as part of his Yerusha doesn't what? Does not attest to his Kohanic status. Because why is he getting this truma? Why is he getting the truma? Not b'toras truma, right? What is he getting it as? Yerusha. It's answer. So both sides. So that it's so fascinating. That's the case the Gemara says of hacholek bebezdin. It's not a case of where Bezdin is going ahead and handing out the truma. It's a case of where brothers, the son of a Kohen, 4 brothers, I'm giving 4 as an example, 4 brothers, son of a Kohen, are coming to Bezdin to split their father's estate. And in the estate is truma. So the fact that that all the sons get truma does not at all go ahead and reflect on their Kohanic status, because they're getting truma as part of their Yerusha. Such an incredible case. To which the Gemara says, Pshita, okay, that's obvious, because obviously when the brothers are dividing up the estate and there's truma in the estate, truma is looked at as property. So of course, halacha l'maisa, again, it doesn't attest to Kohanic status. So Ma'adatema, the Gemara says, what would you have thought? Ma'adatema, midahanach la'achila, hainami la'achila. I would have thought like this. Since 3 out of the 4 brothers are bona fide Kohanim, right? So again, remember, Avihu, Elazar, and Itamar, we know that their yichus is intact. They're going to eat the truma that they're getting from the inheritance. Hanach la'achila. I'm sorry. So, hai nami la'achila. Maybe I would think also that therefore, again, Abosai, as part of this disbursement is also like a stempel on Nadav's yichus that he should also be able to eat. Kamash malan, hanach la'achila, haile zabuni. To which the Gemara says, maybe not. No, I should say, not at all. When the brothers come to Bezdin, ultimately again, to split up the estate, that's exactly what they're doing, to splitting up the estate. What is Bezdin not getting involved with right now? What are they not getting involved in? They're not getting involved in Nadav's questionable kahuna. Shabbos said, so therefore, what does that mean? Elazar, I should say, Avihu, Elazar, and Itamar. What are they going to do with the truma, ultimately, that they inherited from their father? What can they do with it? They can eat it. What is Nadav going to do with it? Sell it. They will say, again, because Lamaisa, Nadav still has a question of yichos to work out. So we're not getting involved in that right now. What we're going to do is we're going to split the estate. You're going to say, but 1 second, what is Nadav, the questionable Kohen, going to do with truma? Very simple. What is he going to do with truma? He'll sell it. They will say, what in general happens when someone other than a Kohen... But by the way, I want to point that you can have a lot of cases like this. Let's else can have a case like this. I'll give you a great case like this, where you have sometimes Yisrael grandchildren who inherit a Kohanic grandfather, right? It could absolutely happen. But see, you can have a couple of convoluted cases like this, but you can have many cases of people who can't eat truma, who inherit truma as part of an estate. So what do you do with it? Very simple. It's a commodity. Now, granted, there's not a lot of money to be made in selling truma. This is a good investment tip, by the way. You're welcome, right? So I'll say, so Lamaisa, again, there's not a lot of money to be made in selling truma. Why not? Very limited buying pool, right? Very limited buying pool. In other words, remember again, only people can sell to our Kohanim. So the truth is, to a certain degree, you're a little bit at the mercy of the buyer. But Lamaisa, okay, so it's not a strong investment vehicle, right? It's not an incredible return on investment. But Lamaisa, you could sell it. So we'll say this is incredible. Stay for if we bring the brayso together now, I understand it. So halacha Lamaisa, the brayso tells me like this: if you see a guy eating truma, that attests to his Kohanic status. Okay, you see him eating Ma'aser Rishon, attests to his Kohanic status. Now again, that is a narrowly defined case, as occurring after Ezra, where Levium no longer get Meiser Rishon with a guy whose status was subject to some level of controversy. You see him eating Meiser Rishon, that could attest to his Kohanic status. However, if you see Truma being given to someone as part of an inheritance settlement, being adjudicated by Beis Din, that does not attest to his Kohanic status, because when Beis Din awards him the Truma, they're awarding him the Truma how? B'toras, as a form of inheritance, and not as what? An attestation to his Kohanic status. Incredible. To which the Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Eiman lekuna pi eid. So Rabbi Yehuda said that Allah Lamaisa, we do not go ahead and establish kuna based on the testimony of one aid. To which the Gemara says, I'll point out to her something very interesting. In our Mishnah, which was on, where was the Mishnah? Mishnah, which was on Chaf Gimel Amud Bey. So Rabbi says, here's what we had. We had Rabbi Lazar who said, Ma'alin lekuna pi eid, that you could establish someone as a Kohen based on the testimony of one witness. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel who also said that you could establish a Kohen based on the testimony of one witness. So it seems to be they're saying the same exact things. That's what the Gemara asks over here. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Eliezer, aren't Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer saying the same thing? So maybe what they're arguing about is the following case where you have one witness who objects. What does this mean? The Rabbi Eliezer Savar, Ir Erchad, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Savar, Ir Er Trey. So we'll say, look at Rashi just a moment. Rabbi Eliezer Savar, 5 lines after the Bible in Rashi. Rabbi Eliezer Savar, Ir Erchad, Havi Ir Ve'ein Echad Neman Alav Lachshiro. So maybe Rabbi Eliezer says like this, that if you have an Eid Echad who comes along and says that what? This guy is not a Kohen. He brings a claim disputing the Kohanic status. Having another Eid Echad who testify that he is a Kohen is not going to work. Versus Rav Shimon Gamliel who says that no, if you have an Eid Echad who's saying that he's a Kohen, in order to disprove that Eid Echad, what do you need? Ir or Trey. You need two witnesses to object. So the Gemara says that's true. Ha'am Rabbi Yochanan, Divrei Hakol Ein Ir Pachas Mishnayim. Rabbi Yochanan said everyone agrees that what? That Allah Lamaisa, in order to disprove a person's Kohanic status, you need at least two witnesses. What's the case here? Interesting. We'll say, here we go. Here's the case. We have a guy. We're going to call him Aaron. Aaron's father is a Kohen. We'll say, everyone knows Aaron's father is a Kohen. His yichus is intact. Good. Now what happened? So we'll say, presumably that would allow Aaron to allow him to be considered a Kohen as well. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. A rumor went out about Aaron saying that his mother was a grusha or a chalutza. Now we'll say, now what happens? V'achsine. Now we'll say, now as a result of that call, so we'll say, so just tell you what happened, is in the beginning, right, we assumed Aaron was a Kohen. Why do we assume Aaron was a Kohen? Why do we assume so? His father is a Kohen. Good, everything is good. A rumor started that his mother was a grusha, mother was a chalutza. We'll say, what do you do with a rumor? So in general, in halacha, how to deal with rumors is dependent on the nature of the rumor. There are different rumors. So without getting into that right now, rumor starts. So what do we do? I will say, what do we do when the rumor starts? We remove Aaron from the kuna. In other words, I will say what we do is we put him on paid leave, right? He's an administrative paid leave, right? So again, we're not saying you're not a Kohen, but we got to figure out what this is. So the call starts, we remove him. Okay. Okay, we'll say, follow this story, brother. It's great. An Eid Echad comes along and says, I know that Aaron is a Kohen. It's not true. His mother was a wonderful lady. She's not a grusha. She's not a chalutza. She's nothing. Right? She's a regular person. Aaron is good to go. Okay, great. Eid Echad comes along. I'll say, therefore, what do you do? We restore him back to the kahuna. Story is not over. Another two witnesses come along and say, no, it's not true. Aaron's mother was a grusha. She's still a wonderful lady. But Lamaisa, she was a grusha when she married Aaron's father. Illegal marriage. And therefore Aaron is a halal. What happens? Vachsine. Once again, we remove him from the kuna. Not done. Va'asa eid echad va'amar yidana beid the kohen who an eid echad comes along and says, not true. His mother is not a grusha. I could write, and he gives her Aaron's a kohen. Okay, now we'll see now what happens. Va'amar yidana beid kohen. So we'll say here we go. Udukuli alma mitzar from this. I will say now here's what's interesting about this case. If you follow the flow, here's what you have. Right, young Aaron. How did Aaron's life start? Right. As a Kohen, life was good. As a Kohen, we'll say, then what happened? Right? So there was a call. Now remember again the story. There was a call. Call happened. Ben Grusha, Ben Chalutza. Okay? Put him on leave. So it starts with a call. We'll say, what happened after the call? Follow the flow. What happened after the call? Eid Echad, that he's good. Okay? Then, two witnesses, Ben Grusha, Ben Chalutza. Then, another Eid Echad that he's good. So the Gemara is like this. They'll say, essentially, what do I have over here? I have two witnesses attesting to his Kohanic fitness. So the Gemara says, Dukuli Amma, mitztarfen le'edus. Everyone agrees that halacha l'maisa, the two witnesses who testified that Aaron was really a fit Kohen, they could combine. And I will say, that's a huge chiddush. Why is that a huge chiddush? Because they did not testify together. But again, we'll talk about that in just a moment. Everyone agrees that halacha l'maisa mitztarfen le'edus, that you can go ahead and combine those two individual witnesses to form a testimonial unit of two edim testifying to the fact that Aaron in fact is a Kohen. V'hacha, listen to this. V'hacha demechosh lezelusa de beidina kamiflagi. So I'll say, what's the point of contention? This is fascinating. Do we have to be worried? Lezelusa. What does lezelusa mean? Do we have to be worried about impugning the reputation of Beis Din? We'll say, what does this mean? We'll say, this does not look good. Right? Why doesn't it look good? Because what we're constantly doing over here is we're flip-flopping over the reputation of Aaron the Kohen, right? He is a Kohen, he's not a Kohen. He is a Kohen, he is not a Kohen. We restore him, we take him down. So at a certain point in time, I will say, do we have to be concerned? And this is actually very interesting. So I will say, there's a concept that we've seen this many times throughout Shas, which is we have to be careful to maintain the integrity of the Beis Din. Because if the integrity of Beis Din is compromised, then that leads to an erosion, a fundamental erosion of the integrity of the halachic system. So sometimes I will say what we have to do is we have to place the integrity of the Beis Din over the needs of the particular individual. So we'll say in a case like this, where is Beis Din doing anything wrong? No. I'll say this just happens to be a crazy case of a rumor, an Eid Echad, two Eidim, an Eid Echad. So there's just a constant flip-flopping. The problem is, I'll say, as often happens in life, is that people often don't know the details. They just kind of see like a big picture and they draw their own conclusions. So the problem is, even though there's very good reason for the flip-flopping over here, do we have to be concerned that at a certain point in time, we just need to shut this down because this does not look good for the Beis Din? So the Gemara says, listen to this. Tanakama savar, kevan da'achsine lo maskina le. Tanakama says, you know what the truth is? Once you remove him from the kahuna, which will say essentially means after those two Eidim come and you remove him from the kahuna, lo maskina le. We shut it down. At that point, we're shutting it down. Because Rabbi said we have to be concerned about impugning the integrity of the Beis Din, which I will say, if you think about it, is really unfair to Aaron. Right? Why is it unfair to Aaron? Because there is another aid that's coming, which means that Aaron has two witnesses who go ahead and testify to his Kohanic fitness. But I will say, this is an incredible musar. And the incredible musar is that sometimes the needs of the collective always outweighs the needs of the individual. So Rabbi say, in this case, the needs of the collective is maintaining the integrity of Beis Din. And maintaining the integrity of the Beis Din, says the Tanakama, means not flip-flopping. Not flip-flopping, right? Two witnesses came, they said Aaron is a Ben Grusha, Ben Chalutza, that's it, we're done, case shut. Another witness comes, we can't do this, we have to maintain the integrity of the system. And therefore, again, Rabbi Shimon says, no. Savar anon achsina le, va'anan maskina le. Rabbi Shimon says, no. You know how you maintain the integrity of Beis Din? Rabbi, you know how you maintain the integrity of Beis Din? Follow the halacha. That's how you maintain integrity, right? So again, this is a complicated, convoluted case, but Lamaisa, follow it through to the end. We removed him from his kuna, now let's restore him. And we're not worried about impugning the integrity of Beis Din. I will say, and I want to be clear, it's not the pshat that Rabbi Shimon Gamliel doesn't care about the reputation of the Beis Din. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, a Beis Din has one job and one job only, and that is what? That is what? Uphold the halacha. Uphold the halacha, and ultimately, again, you have to uphold the halacha. What people think, you can't control what people think. If anyone who cares enough to find out about the truth will find out about the truth. And anyone who wants to come up with their own ideas will come up with their own ideas. So this is incredible. So therefore, that's the machlokes over here. Maskef Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi says, Ihachi, afilu treu treinami. If that's the case, that halacha lamaisa, why do you have to set it up ultimately again as kol eid echad, two witnesses eid echad? Even set it up as a case of 2 against 2. Look at Rashi, almost right across from Rashi. Afilu trei asu ba'adei adadinayim pam shniya. Rabbi Lazar l'maskinale. See, Rabbi Lazar, here's what's interesting. According to Rabbi Lazar, it sounds, or Rabbi Eliezer, it sounds like once 2 witnesses come and say that Aaron is a ben grusha ben chalutza, we're done. We're done. Which means that even if immediately afterwards 2 witnesses were to say, no, he is not a ben grusha ben chalutza, it sounds like over here that we would not be listening to them. So why don't you set up the case like that? That's even more compelling. To which the Gemara says, Amar Ravashi, the mitztarpin le'idos kamiflagi. I will say this is fascinating. To which the Gemara says, no. In fact, the machlokes is something else. I will say this is fascinating. I just want to point out, by the way, this machlokes of we originally thought the machlokes was arichoshesh lezelusa de beidina. Do you have to be choshesh for impugning the integrity of the Beis Din? Which I will say is a fascinating idea about whether or not do you have to be concerned with the way things look, or in life, do you just do what's right? Which I will say, isn't that a tension that we live with all of the time? Right? Do I have the right to say, you know what? As long as I know what I'm doing is correct, I don't care what it looks like or what other people think. Or, no. Even if you're doing what's right, you still have to be concerned with what other people think. So I will say, this is not only machlokes for Beis Din. Who else is it a machlokes for? It's a machlokes for us. So I will say, so what is the halacha, the personalistic halacha in that case? Right? Can you just do what's right and not care what people think? And the answer is a resounding no. In other words, I have to do what's right. Am I obligated to care about what people think? I'm not really obligated to care about what people think, but I am obligated to care about what my actions look like in the eyes of others. Bless you. In other words, there is a concept, Rabbi say, of v'yisem nikiyim. V'yisem nikiyim means my actions have to look correct in the eyes of others. It is not enough for me to know that what I am doing is correct, but they have to look correct, because chas v'shalom, if my actions look incorrect or wrong in the eyes of others, there's 2 problems. Number 1, people may learn from me and may not understand the nuances of what I'm doing and may end up doing something wrong. And also, if people think I'm doing something wrong, I'm an ambassador of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Each of us is an ambassador of the Ribbon Shalom. If people see me doing something wrong, that's a chil Hashem. That's a desecration of He who I represent, i.e. the Ribbon Shalom. Say for Rabbi say, we are choshesh lezelusa de beidina in our personal lives as well. I have to know what I'm doing is correct, but I also have to make sure that my actions look correct in the eyes of others. In any event, the Gemara says, but that's not what they're arguing about. What are they arguing about? Rabbi says, fascinating. What they're arguing about is, see, Rabbi say, the Gemara took it for granted. Remember, what was the progression? Let's go back. What's Aaron's narrative? What's Aaron's life story? Aaron's life story is he started off in the comfortable confines of the kahuna. Happy, lucky, right? Wonderful. Then what happens? Kol comes along. What's the kol? Right? Ben grusha, ben chalutza. Let's follow the progression. Right? Remove him from the kahuna. Then what happens? Eid echad is good. 2 eidim is not good. I don't mean he's not good, but you understand. 2 eidim is not good. And then what? Eid echad is good. See what the machlokes is? Do the 2 individual eidim who said that he's good, can they in fact combine to form a testimonial unit? Here we go. So the Gemara says, "Ella Amar Ravashi b'mitztarfin le'idos kamiflagi." They're arguing about whether or not 2 individual witnesses have the ability to combine to form a testimonial unit. That's the machlokes. Or we plucked it the Hani Torah says fasting. This sign, here we go. Ein edusan mitztarefes ad sheyiru shneihem ke'echad. So we'll say the Tanakama says 2 witnesses cannot go ahead and form a testimonial unit until what? Until when? Until they see the same event at the same time. Look at Rashi, almost right across in the Gemara. Ad sheyiru shneihem ke'echad esa edos lafuki echad omer b'fanai helvu ve'echad omer b'fanai hodelo alav. I will say, give an example. The Rashi actually says something like this. There's 2 things that's happening over here. The Tanakama says 2 witnesses only combine to form a testimonial unit if they see the same event at the same time. I will say, give an example. Let's say you have 2 witnesses, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven says, I saw A lend B $10,000. I saw the halva. Shimon says, B, the borrower, told me that he borrowed $10,000 from A, right? So we'll say here the distinction in the cases. Now, if you think about it, both A and B, both Reuven and Shimon are both testifying that what? That A lent B $10,000, but they're not testifying about the same thing, right? Reuven says, I saw the loan. Shimon says, the borrower told me he borrowed the money. See, they're saying the same thing. They're saying the same thing. They're both testifying to the fact that A lent B $10,000. That's true, but they're not testifying about the same event. So therefore, Rabbi said, the Gemara says like this. Tanakama says that halacha l'maisa, witnesses only combine when they testifying about the same event that they saw at the same time. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha Omer, afilu b'zeh achazeh. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says that halacha l'maisa, no, even b'zeh achazeh. At the end of the day, even if they saw one, right? If you look at Rashi says over here, furthermore, again, their eidos is not upheld until ultimately, again, they testify together. Which I will say means seeing the same event is not enough. Seeing it together is not enough. But what else do you need to have? They need to testify together in Beis Din. Rabbi Nassan Omer Shomen Devarav Shal Zeh Hayom Ukishiyavo Chaver Lemachar Shomen Devarav. Rabbi Nassan says not true. You could even accept the testimony of one guy today and accept the testimony of the second guy tomorrow, and then we could combine them into one testimonial unit. So Rabbi say this is actually quite fascinating. So it turns out that halacha l'maisa, whether or not, so I will say there's a number of different testimony, a number of different pieces of information given over here. The point that's important for us, I will say, is let's say you have 2 guys who mamish saw the same thing, but they're coming to Beis Din at 2 different times. Can we accept their testimony at 2 different times and combine that into one testimonial unit? That's machlokes. Then that's the machlokes being brought down over in the Gemara, right? Tanakama says no, Rabbi Nassan says yes, and the Gemara suggests that's the same machlokes that's occurring over here in our sugya. So if Rabbi say, I'll just point out, fine. So that's how the sugya ends. So interestingly enough, the machlokes is not about arichoshesh lezelusa de beidina. That's not the machlokes. The machlokes is, in this case, where you have kol, Eid Echad says that he's good, 2 Eidim is not good, Eid Echad is good. Can I take those 2 Eid Echads, combine them into a testimonial unit? That's the machlokes. So beautiful. So that's where the sugya ends. But say, I want to just show you, if you take a look, I WhatsApped you the Rambam. See, I just want to close out this sugya in the right way. So the Rambam points out over something very interesting about say. So remember, what we're left with over here is halacha l'maisa. Right? Well, what was this whole sugya about? Whole sugya was about what attests to the yichus of a kohen. So we'll say what behaviors show us that a kohen is a truly bona fide kohen. So we'll say, look what the Rambam says. This is in Hilchos Isurei Bia, Perek Esrim, chapter 20. So the Rambam writes as follows, just quickly. Kol kohanim bizman hazeh bechazakahim kohanim ve'in ochel ela b'katshi agvul. V'hu shetia truma shel divrei ma'al truma shel Torah v'chalosh einoch. So we'll say, number 1, the Rambam says, Kohanim today, their cheskas kahuna is midrabanan. In other words, their cheskas kahuna, guy shows up, says, hey, I'm a kohen. What do we say to him? What do we say to him? Good for you. Right? Shkoyach, right? Good for you. Right? Fine. You say you're a Kohen, that's fine. But Lamaisa, claiming you're a Kohen, entitles you to only eat Truma D'Rabbanan. Truma D'Rabbanan, Chala D'Rabbanan, rabbinic entitlements. You can get Rishon, you could Duchen, however, Beis, Eizu Kohen Miyuchas. So Rabbi say, but here's what we want to know. What makes a Kohen Miyuchas, says the Rambam? This is in Halacha Beis. So what allows a Kohen to have bona fide Kohanic credentials? Listen to what he writes. Kol she'idu lo shnei edim, shu Kohen ben Ploni HaKohen, uPloni ben Ploni HaKohen, ad ha'ish she'ino tzarech b'dika, v'hu HaKohen sheshimish al gabi hamizbeach. I will say, the only way to become a Kohen Miyuchas is to have testimony that you have unbroken lineage to a Kohen who served in the Beis HaMikdash. Because Rabbi say, if you have a Kohen who served in the Beis HaMikdash, remember, any Kohen who did the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash had their genealogy vetted by the Sanhedrin. So if you could trace your way back to a Kohen who did Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, then your genealogy, then your yichus is absolutely unequivocally intact. Shilu lo badku beis din agadol acharov lo hayo manichan oso lavod lefichach ibosim sabosei. So therefore, again, so this is interesting. So pretty much now you begin to see that is the only way, according to the Rambam, to become a Kohen Miyuchas. To have edus on your genealogy back to a Kohen who served in the Beis HaMikdash. Anything less than that, they will say, well, what? We'll give you Kohanic Yichus, quote unquote, midrabanan. But ultimately, to be called a Kohen Miyuchas, who ultimately, again, could eat Truma D'Oraisa, could eat Chala D'Oraisa, you'd have to trace your lineage back, ultimately, all the way to the Mizbeach. So I will say, the Rambam goes on and he says, Chala Bizman Azav. So again, the Rambam then goes on to discuss the halachos of Chala, but again, I will say, that is the halacha with establishing a Kohen Miyuchas. So therefore, it turns out, we went through this whole sugya. Truma consumption doesn't make you a Kohen Miyuchas. Chala consumption doesn't make you a Kohen Miyuchas. Getting Rishon doesn't make you a Kohen Miyuchas. Duchening does. Those are all Kohanic behaviors. Beautiful. The only thing that makes you a Kohen with intact Yichus is Eidos, tracing you to an ancestor who served in the Beis HaMikdash. Incredible. We'll say, let's look at the Mishnah and then we'll stop for today. Mishnah. Haisha shenech b'sha bidei ovei kochavim. We'll say a very interesting case here. A woman who was taken captive, by Gentile captors. So we'll say, so remember again, up until now, we've always operated with an assumption that unfortunately, when a woman was taken captive, what do we assume happened? She was violated by her captors, right? So the Gemara says something very interesting over here. If a woman was taken captive, right, by non-Jews, al yidei mammon mutaris labayla. If ultimately, again, she was taken captive for ransom, for money, this is fascinating. We assume that she was not violated by her captors. Because what's interesting, the Mishnah says that people knew that if they wanted the full ransom, they had to leave the captive intact. Right? The moment you start to do things to the captive is the moment you run the risk of losing the ransom. So I just want to point out, when the Mishnah says stuff like this is reflecting historical realities, right? This is not something like they came up with in the Beis Medrash, right? Now let's say this was, they're living this. They're living this. Jews taken captive, ultimately, and we'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up with this Mishnah. Fascinating sugya, but at least we closed out the sugya of Kohen Miyuchas. Shkoyach.